War zone Minneapolis protests escalate into riots and peaceful demonstrations spread to several cities. We'll explain what the heck is going on between the president and Twitter and love hate 8 point counterpoint style. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Friday, May 29th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo. Good morning.
Happy Friday, Jill. I'm very excited to do battle with you on our Love Hate 8 today because I think we have diametrically opposed views on this one topic. So stick around for that.
I agree, and we usually agree. So this should be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the news, though. For the third night in a row, protests have spiraled out of control in downtown Minneapolis, where demonstrators overnight took over the city's third precinct, driving the police out and setting the whole building on fire. Separate demonstrations in several other cities, including in New York, were mostly peaceful. These protests come after the local prosecutor in Minneapolis says there is evidence in the George Floyd case that does not support a criminal charge against the officer who killed him. Although the Department of Justice has prioritized the case for investigation, and also that prosecutor came back and said that he misspoke after he made that initial statement, and that they're still looking into it.
Yeah. So this officer, his name is Derek Chauvin. The NBC News did a piece yesterday. They looked into his background. He's the officer who was recorded kneeling on the neck of Floyd, this unarmed black man who it looks like he suffocated while under the knee of Officer Chauvin. But NBC News, they did a piece about looking into his background, and they found that he was the target of at least a dozen conduct complaints over 19 years as a cop in Minneapolis, which I think is one of the reasons why things got so dicey last night. I mean, people are just enraged over this, and I don't blame them, to be honest. But he and 3 other officers have been fired, and we're going to see what happens in this investigation. But it's the photos out of Minneapolis this morning are, I mean, we said war zone Minneapolis. That's not really that much of a stretch. Like, it really is. It looks like a battle zone there.
And meanwhile, Twitter overnight slapped a warning on a tweet from President Trump in which he suggested that the looters in Minneapolis would be shot, saying that the tweet violated its policy against glorifying violence. That's what Twitter said. The president wrote, quote, "These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen." Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way, any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you. This, of course, comes just after President Trump signed an executive order targeting social media companies by limiting the legal protection that they are given by law. That protection allows companies like Twitter and Facebook to avoid liability from content created by their users. The order doesn't have much practicality right now. It will certainly be challenged in court. And it comes after Twitter added fact-check notices to some of the president's tweets. I was surprised this morning when I saw that they slapped another that warning on his tweet. They are not backing down, Carlo.
No, they're doubling down, and that is going to enrage him today. So we're going to see. The White House pretty much went nuclear over this. I mean, remember, they added these like fact-checking notices to some of his tweets. They didn't take the tweets down. They just added this little thing at the bottom of them. So it's not exactly censorship, which the Trump administration is saying it is. And again, like you said, Jill, as a practical matter, this doesn't really mean anything. The Chamber of Commerce, which is a fairly conservative-leaning organization, they put out a statement last night that was very pointed, in which they said, which is accurate, that executive orders can't undo federal law. And federal law protects these companies from liability. Remember, the First Amendment rules, I know we say this like 100 times, but it's useful to remind people. First Amendment rules don't apply to private companies like Twitter or Facebook, Google, right? They can do pretty much whatever they want as long as you agree to those terms of service that you say I agree and click right through when you start an account. But likewise, these companies can argue on First Amendment grounds that this order is unconstitutional because it's telling them what to do, which is an argument I suspect they will make. But the other reason why this is just dumb, I think, in terms of like politically from the president is, if you're, and I'm not the first person to make this point, but it bears repeating. If you're a company like Twitter and you're worried that you could get sued if your users start posting defamatory or libelous content, right now they're not worried about that, right? Because they have this liability shield. But if you start to worry about that, you're going to be much likelier to take those kinds of posts down, right? And I hate to say it, but President Trump is like number one with a bullet when it comes to posting defamatory, libelous content that also happens to very often be untrue. So it seems like this would essentially hurt him if it were to actually, come to be, right?
Well, look, Mark Zuckerberg, of course, who CEO of Facebook, which owns Instagram, he did an interview yesterday with CNBC. He said he does not think social media sites should be fact checking politicians. He said, I don't think Facebook or internet platforms in general should be arbiters of truth. Political speech is one of the most sensitive parts in a democracy, and people should be able to see what the politicians say. I think this is so complicated. It
It
is
is.
such a complicated issue. Facebook's come under a lot of fire because they don't there's no fact checking
You
of
could do whatever you
anything,
want.
and you could do
Yeah.
it's like the Wild West in some ways. um Look at these medias, social media. What it is doing now, like what Facebook is now, is not what it was created for when Mark Zuckerberg was in his dorm room. And so they've just kind of developed into these different beasts, so to speak. And I think we do have to figure out what is the balance between free speech and hate speech, and where is the line. And it's super complicated. I
No,
don't
there's
know.
not an easy answer. You're right, and I mean, really, what these companies need to be is regulated, not through executive orders, but through real congressional lawmaking about what their role in society is. That's a thing for another pod. But back to the president, just in terms of the politics and the strategy of this. Remember, President Trump needs foils, right? I think that's a really important point that can't be said enough. That's how he, that's where he thrives, right? When he has somebody to push up against and to draw contrast with. So, right, he had that with Hillary Clinton. He has it to a degree with Joe Biden, and now he's making his foil these social media companies, particularly Twitter. It's also, Jill, it's not a coincidence that we're talking about this right now. The President Trump, love him, hate him, don't care about him. He is extremely good at messaging and at setting a narrative. He's probably better than anyone I've seen in terms of setting a narrative. I mean, we're talking about the First Amendment and media law right now, instead of talking about how there's now more than 100,000 people dead in this pandemic. What makes this all even dumber for me, if I was a Trump, strategist, is that he actually could be out there talking about how cases are on a downward trend, about how testing has been ramped up. So I just think it's bad strategy, but I understand why he's doing it, because it's about changing the conversation.
Meanwhile, on that topic of coronavirus, infections and deaths continue to decrease in some areas of the country, but they are increasing in others. The overall US trend, though, is now downward. A different story in Latin America. Brazil is now effectively the world's epicenter. Cases are rising sharply as well in Argentina, Mexico, and Colombia.
Yeah, the one place in the U.S. that I have my eye on is Wisconsin. The cases and deaths are both rising significantly there. Remember, 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin lifted their stay-at-home order. So you're going to see when stuff like that happens. Remember, it takes like a couple of weeks for the data to reflect new cases. But also, I think what people need to realize, Jill, is we're looking at a summer of, I think, a plateau, right? We did bend the curve. We did. No question about it. We didn't crush it like they did in New Zealand, but we bent it, and we're on this kind of like slight downward slope of a plateau, which I think is what most of this summer is going to be. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes, but I think people just need to be prepared, right? We're going to have these ups and downs as everyone inches back to like some sense of normalcy. It is, this is a really regional thing. We're in pretty good shape here in New York, just in terms of the drop off in new hospitalizations. But the other thing is, and I know that this gets very convoluted, but new case reports can often be misleading in and of themselves because of the testing issue, right? We are testing something along the lines of 330, 350,000 people a day in the United States now, which is still not enough, frankly, but it's much better than we were. So more testing is gonna increase the case count, right?
It's interesting. I woke up feeling pessimistic for the first time. I've been feeling
Really?
optimistic, and I woke up feeling pessimistic just because of the lag time, between reopening and the new cases going up. And hospitalizations is a really good metric too, because we don't. The study that came out earlier this week is that 80% of people get this and they're asymptomatic, which kind of blew my mind. So to your point also about increased testing, and that's why the cases go up, but hospitalizations you can't argue with. And
Right.
Alabama right now, these hospitals in many places are full, in
Yeah.
Montgomery, for example. California saw its highest, forget the hospitalizations, but saw its highest case count, daily case count this week. And they reopened. And, my thinking was, if you're outside, it's harder to get. I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit more nervous, and I feel like we keep talking about a second wave, but I still feel like we're in the first wave, and right now it's so regional because no one's
Yeah.
really traveling. But if things get back to normal and people start traveling again, and that's the expectation in some places, then it doesn't stay regional. On
No,
that
that's a good
note,
point.
though,
Yeah.
the Boston Marathon, by the way, has been canceled for the first time in its 124-year history. Organizers had pushed the race back originally from April to September. Now they just say it is not feasible to run this year. So they're going to do a virtual marathon. I'm
What
a
does that even mean?
marathoner.
I
So
do. What does
what it
that mean?
means is I looked it up because I was just like, what
You're
in the
gonna run
heck?
in your
Um,
backyard?
no, so basically, participants are going to be required to complete a marathon, which is 26.2 miles, within a 6 hour time period, anytime between September 4th and, September 7th and 14th. And the runners can map out their own route, their own 26.2 mile
Right.
route. Uh, the Boston Marathon is like the premier marathon. It's super
Yeah.
hard to get into. It's very elite.
Have you run it?
No, no, I couldn't get into it because I'm not fast enough. But it's
Really?
just,
I didn't know that.
another sign of the times. Yeah, you have to do like a sub, I don't know what it is, maybe 3 hours.
Oh,
And you have to be a really, really good runner. On
marathons.
the
Just briefly, Jill, I'm glad you
yeah,
mentioned the Boston Marathon because I just think people should realize there aren't going to be any of these mass gatherings this year, right? It ain't going to happen. So, there's not going to be a New York Marathon. There's not going to be any concerts. Like people just need to get that in their head. That is not happening, I think, until we have a vaccine. We maybe get back into some normalcy, which I hope we do, and I think we already are. But these things that involve a lot of people coming in really close confinement with each other, it's just like just get it out of your head. Like it ain't happening.
yeah. Well, on the economic front, another 2.1 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, which brings the total job losses since this pandemic started to 41 million. That is 1 in 4 employed adults. There's two silver linings. The pace of the new jobless claims is easing, so that's good, right? We were peaking at 6 million. I think we had one week. And then the other thing is that continuing claims also fell by about 4 million. So that means that some of those people, to be a continuing claim, it means you're collecting it for 2 weeks in a row or more. And
Right.
and that means that some of those people are getting back into the workforce. So that's hugely important.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. The thing on this that I wanted to mention is, the $600 a week in extra unemployment benefits that's been provided by the federal government that's really helped cushion the blow for a lot of people. That's going to expire 2 months from now, the end of what is this? The end of May, so the end of July. That goes away. Those $1,200 stimulus checks, I would assume they have mostly been spent by now, at least by the people who needed them, unlike me or you who didn't need them. But this partisan standoff continues in Washington over what the next phase of this stimulus or economic help is going to look like. Mitch McConnell in the Senate says he wants to wait another month to get a better sense of where we stand. So hope more help on the way. Maybe, probably too early to say though what it's going to look like.
And before we get to some good news, by the way, it is Friday. So all of us in desperate need of something new to watch or listen to this weekend to keep us from losing our minds are perhaps in luck. Space Force, the big budget Netflix series starring Steve Carell. It spoofs real life events. It premieres today. Early reviews are bad to very bad, despite the A-list comedic cast. John Malkovich getting good points for his performance. I
was
wasn't
bummed by
totally
this.
looking forward to this, but tell me more.
No. Well, a lot of people were. It had a lot of hype, but Steve, for a movie star, Steve Carell does not do very many good movies or shows. I have to say, it seems like he really coasts on the whole Office thing. But the other big drop today, Jill. Fridays have sort of become like the big drop day, right? It's where like new albums come out. Netflix puts most of its big new things out on Friday. But Lady Gaga's sixth studio album, Chromatica, drops today. That's highly anticipated, and the reviews that I've seen are much stronger than the Space Force show. So that'll be good.
First of all, what do you mean he hasn't done good movies? By the way, I'm looking. I totally I know we're about to go.
What has he done? What has he done that's good?
Crazy Stupid Love, one of my favorite movies. Okay, Little Miss Sunshine. I looked it up.
That was good. Little Miss Sunshine was good.
Little Miss Sunshine. The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I mean, I know I'm going back a long time.
You're going back
here,
into you're going back into the hits. I think that lately, show me a good movie Steve Carell has done in the last like 5-10 years.
I'm a big Steve Carell fan, but okay, I get it. Also, this weekend, by the way, the big thing that we did not mention that is happening this weekend is the space launch, the SpaceX launch. It got delayed from earlier this week. It's supposed to be tomorrow, 3:22 p.m., and that'll be super cool. I hope it goes off. I hope it actually happens tomorrow. And I think it's kind of cool now that it's happening on a weekend. I know we were bummed that it had to be delayed, but there's no live sports. Let's tune into this.
Start drinking early, baby.
I guarantee it has like the highest ratings of any launch.
For sure. No, it'll be. I'm glad you mentioned. I had actually completely forgotten about it. But so
right, Carlo,
before we get to
okay, quick good news, Carlo.
Okay, so I'll try and be quick about this, but it's this has been buried lately, and I want to mention. I probably should have mentioned it earlier when we were talking about coronavirus, but the R naught, Jill. We've talked about this. I know that it's like sort of out there. It's the calculation that determines how fast the virus is spreading, right? So if the R naught is above 1.0, it essentially means that coronavirus is spreading, right? One person is infecting another person, or more than another person. If it's below 1, it means it's not really spreading. It's either staying the same or it's the outbreak is shrinking. We talk about cases and deaths; those are important, but the R naught is really one of the most important metrics in terms of just calculating if we've hit a peak or not. So I looked into it last night, and right now the national R naught number is just a touch over 1. It's 1.02. So some states are above, like we just talked about, especially on the Gulf Coast, Tennessee, Arkansas, but a lot of states are below it, and they have been below it now for a while, which means that the spikes we're seeing regionally are really being offset by the drop in new infections elsewhere, like here in New York. So you can check that out, rt.live. You can see how this number is graphed. But it's really good news. And back to the president, not being good on messaging around this stuff. Like, this is good news. The R naught going down is one of the things that we've been wanting to see, and now it is.
No, it's great. And you can, for everyone listening, you can stump your friends this weekend by saying, "Do you know what the R naught is?" Because exactly. I, who cover this every day, I hadn't heard that actual term. So,
really?
Also, Yeah, so my little good news, I've been like crazy about drive-in movie theaters, and I think that since the beginning of this thing, the Miami Dolphins are actually turning Hard Rock Stadium into an outdoor movie theater capable of holding 230 vehicles. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So wait, so you like drive onto the field?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but yeah, you can drive in your car. There's plenty of room. They put up a big screen. They're going to be showing movies. I think it's awesome.
You know,
I kind of wish
I
we had that here.
no, well, Jill. So last weekend, because you were talking about this so much, my wife and I were like, why don't we see if we can, if we can go to a drive-in this week? So my wife found one. There's one out in like Pennsylvania, but it's not that far away from here. But it was only showing the Trolls movie. It's like I'm not going to drive, 100 miles to go watch the Trolls movie in my car.
I do like
But
the Trolls movie. There's one in upstate New York, in Hyde Park, I think.
Oh, I didn't see that one, but
we're home of
I'm
the
definitely
FDR
down.
Presidential Library, which I highly recommend. I've been there more times than I'd like to admit. All right, let's do a little love, hate, 8-point counterpoint style. And I'll kick it off. One thing that we love, iPhone reactions. You know what I'm talking about. It basically saves us the precious seconds of having to respond okay to every text. It's basically when you could just do a haha or a love or a like or whatever onto somebody's, or just an okay onto a text that somebody sends you. I used to hate this and I thought it was so annoying. But I've come to love it because I feel like sometimes you text with people and there's just, you don't know how to end it appropriately. So you have to go back. Oh, sounds good. Great. Talk to you then. Okay, cool. Bye. Talk to you then. This is just okay.
Oh man.
You could just like it and you're done. Move on. I get so happy when people do that to my tweets. I mean, my texts.
Really? Okay, so we are so on different pages here because one thing I hate these things. iPhone reactions, it's like the perfect encapsulation to me of how smartphones have just made us complete lazy slobs. And like, I mean, I seriously can't stand it. If I say something funny, Jill, if I'm texting you something funny, I want you to type out the haha instead of giving me the little haha sticker. Like, I think that I deserve that.
Okay.
And but look, I think the worst is when you're on a group chat and not everybody on the chat has an iPhone, because when they do that, the reaction, it comes as an individual text message. Do you know what I'm talking about? Or does everyone
you know
like,
what? This has never happened to me, but go on.
I'm on a couple of these group chats with like some college friends and some buddies from my past, and there's always like one guy who has a non-iPhone, and they do these things, and the reactions come as an individual text message, right? Like Mike laughed at, dot 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 whatever text. I can't stand it. So
usually though, when you
agree to
so for
disagree.
me, I've not done necessarily the haha, and I don't actually do them, but I like when people do them to me because then I could just leave it, and it's kind of like the period at the end of the conversation.
Yeah. See, I just don't.
I won't respond. It's like done. It's great.
Yeah. I don't think you need to respond at all, though.
One thing that we ate, anything we want with all that free time saved from typing out haha.
Okay. Well, look, I'm very curious to hear if other people agree with me or Jill on this, because I don't know where. I know that some of my friends don't agree with me. So maybe I'm
Here's my prediction.
Possible.
Here's my prediction for you, Carlo. Okay. The same way you came around on AirPods, I think in 2 months from now, 3 months from now, you're going to come around on this.
It is true that you made me come around on these AirPods. Now, I don't say that I like them, but I do use them.
Not only did you come around on them, you went and bought the more expensive one that even I wouldn't buy. You bought like the $250 ones.
I bought the ones the new ones when they came out. Yeah, I did.
And then they blocked it. You couldn't hear anything. You were walking around the office like, huh? You couldn't hear anything anyone was saying.
I'm a sellout, so maybe this will happen, but I don't think so. We'll see.
All right, everybody, we got to run. That's what you need to know for Friday, May 29th.
Have a good weekend, guys.